Hey, hi friends, very good morning to everyone. So, yesterday we have seen about the database links and then utilized views. So, today we are going to talk about some of Oracle utilities. So, out of them, the first one we are going to see is SQL Loader. So, even though we don't use this very widely in real time, because nowadays so many tools are available, so people are mainly depending on those tools. But still it is a chance that we might go ahead and use this in future, so better to have a look at that. So SQL Loader is basically a utility from Oracle which will allow you to insert the data into Oracle table from any text file. So like you have data in a notepad, or you have data in an Excel sheet, or you have data in some other format like a WordPad or so. This SQL Loader utility is going to help you to load the data into Oracle database. The same can be done through various other tools, third-party tools that are available in the market. So we have something called Toad, so which we will see it later. So even that will be more GUI friendly and easy to load the data through that. So instead of going for this command line mode, but still all the companies may not use the third party tools, so we need to have a handy experience on this. So when we take a look at this picture, SQL Loader basically will take two inputs. So the first input is in file or input file, which you can see on the right hand side. So that is basically the file which is having the data. So as I said, we'll be loading the data from a particular text file. So that text file is called as in file or input file. And the second input that SQL Loader will take is the control file. So this control file has nothing to do with your database control file. So this is SQL Loader's control file. So the basic thing with this SQL Loader control file is it will tell to SQL Loader how to load the data, where to load the data, and all those things. So you want to load into a particular table, and SQL Loader also gives different options, like you can write where conditions and you can filter the data while inserting, or you have the option to append to the existing table. So like this, different options are available. And do remember, this is only for loading the data, that is only for the insert. So you cannot do any update statements, or you cannot execute any delete statements through SQL Loader. So it purely works for only inserts. But during insertion, as I said, if you want to insert only 100 rows out of your text file, you can do that with the help of the where condition. So like this, it will take two inputs, all that information, how to load the data, where to load the data, whether any condition should apply, all that information we will keep it in SQL Loader control file. And then once you execute this particular SQL Loader, there will be four different outputs. One is of course the data loading into the table. That is the third one which you are seeing here. Obviously that is the ultimate goal for what we have. And all this event, how SQL Loader is working, and how many records it is inserting, and all those things will be recorded in a file, uh, to track, like in future if you want to go ahead and see what happened that particular activity, so there will be a log file created for you for this entire activity, so you can go through the log file to understand what actually happened. And then you have discard file. As I said, if your input file is having 1000 records, but whereas you want to insert only 100 records into the table, you will be bypassing the rest of 900 records. So what are all those 900 records that SQL loader has bypassed? That information will be there in this discard file. So basically you're discarding, means you're not using those rows. So those rows or those discarded rows will be stored in this discard file. So it is also again for us to understand which rows are inserted and which rows are not inserted. And also sometimes it is possible that SQL loader cannot load some data or some rows because of some data type mismatch or whatever it is. So let's say you have given varchar 2 of 50 in the table, but whereas in the input file you have varchar 2 of 75 characters. So definitely, as you know, 75 characters cannot be fit into 50 characters. So Oracle or SQL Loader might throw error in that case. So in such cases, which are all the rows that fail to insert will be recorded in this bad file. So like this, we have four different outputs when we execute the SQL Loader. So let us go and see an example. So here we are just creating one text file, and we are going to insert this data into a particular table called employee. We are going to create a table for that. So there are two things. As I said, either you can insert into a fresh table through this SQL loader, or you can even append to the existing table. So we will see that. So there are totally 5 or 6 rows that I am taking here, and then I am saving this file. Then at Oracle level, I am creating a table. So suppose you are creating the table for this data to be loaded, then the one important thing that you need to follow is the column format or the position of the column. So here the column format or the column position what you have in the text file should match with your column position in the table. So that means, for example, here the first column is ID. So that is the reason in your table even it should mention as ID. So the next column is name. So that should match as the second one here. The third one is accounting. So of course that is the department name that is mentioned. Then salary and then hire date. So here if you look at, I have not mentioned any hire date. So what Oracle will do or what SQL loader will do, we will see that. So at Oracle level, I am creating a table. So let me create this table in a particular user. So I want to create this in TMDBA010 user. So the table has been created now. So next we need to prepare the content of control file. As I said, control file will tell you how to load the data, into which table you need to load the data, etc., etc. And also, for example, you have 5 columns here in the table. But whereas in your text file you have only 4 columns. So while loading the data, you can mention which columns you want to load the data and which columns you want to skip the data. Because I don't have data for date, hire date, so I just used only 4 columns here. So SQL loader control file will be like this. So the first line says load the data, and the second line we are going to provide the input file name, like what is the location of that of the input file, and third line you are going to tell into which table you are going to load the data. So if for example you are loading the data to already existing table, here you will be just adding a word append to. So instead of writing into, you are going to just say append to if it is a already existing table. And then fields terminated by. So in your text file, how the columns are separated should be mentioned here. So here if you look at, the columns are separated by a comma here. So if you use any other character, then you need to mention that character in this particular line. And then finally I am mentioning into what columns the data should be loaded. So let me create this control file. So save this. So we need to use the syntax for SQL loader like this. Just a moment. So we need to say SQL LDR, so that will invoke the SQL loader. Then we need to provide the username and password. So either you can provide username password here, or if you simply enter, then it will ask you for username or password. So that is also fine. Then you need to mention your control file name and location. So control file is already having input file name and location. So automatically the data loading will start. So here you can see it is saying 6 rows have been successfully loaded, and as I said, it has created a log file to see what exactly SQL loader has been done. So when we open this log file, we will be able to see what it has done. So it has taken this ID, name, department and salary. Then it is saying 6 rows have been successfully loaded and there are no rows which got failed. And it will also tell you at what time the loading has been started and what time the loading has been ended. So totally how much time it has taken. So it has taken 0.46 seconds to load the data. So this is how usually we'll be doing it. So what happens in real time is your basically the data loading requirement will come from the application team. So application team will give you the input file. So they will send either by email or something, so that you need to place in the server. You need to copy that file to the server, and then many a times or most of the times application team itself will provide you the syntax of the control file also, SQL loader control file. So because they know what to load and what not to load, so always it is better that the things should come from their side. So they will give you the content of the control file. So you need to just create a SQL loader control file out of the information what they have provided, and then you can execute the command to load the data. So usually the both the inputs like the control file and the input file will come from the application team. So many a times they will not be having access to execute this. So that's the reason as a DBA we need to help them out in order to execute the thing. But as I said again, it depends on. So nowadays people are using so many third party tools in order to easily do this activity. So if it is a frequent activity, let's say, every time you are getting the data into a text file and then you want to load the data. So obviously, let's say at least per week you are doing once. Then, every week it is not a good idea to raise a request and DBA should work on this and all. So in such cases, application team generally they will go ahead and convince the client to purchase some third party tool, and then accordingly we'll be inserting they will be using the tool to load the data. So if it is a very rare case, then yes, DBA involvement might be required. So is that clear with respect to SQL loader, or anyone having any questions? Okay, so moving on to the next one, that is export and import. So this is one of the frequent tasks that as a DBA we do in real time. Again, depends on the environment. So in some environments, almost daily we will be doing this. In some environments, at least 2 or 3 times per week we'll be doing this. So very frequent activity, we mean to say. So that's the reason it is very important for our practice. So when you want to practice this, you should be practicing it rigorously because we'll be using it in real time very frequently. So you should have commands on all the options that we have in export import. So what exactly is this export import? So before going for that, just to give a highlight on what kind of environments we'll be having in real time. So most of you people might be knowing this, but just to have a recap. So let's say there is a new project that was being developed for some particular client. So when the project is acquired by some company, service-based company, so they will start, hiring the people, and they will form different teams like the application team, the database team, etc., etc. And when application team starts developing their data, developing their application. So, to just see the things how they are working and all. So they would be requiring a database to support them. So in that cases, as a DBA team, we need to create an separate database for that phase. So let's say application team is developing an application with version 1.0. So, when the application is in development phase, as I said, we'll be creating a separate database for them, which we generally call it as development database. And in this development database, usually because it doesn't contain any user data and all, so we will be generally giving full access to the development team. Like they will be able to create a table, they will be able to create any other objects, all those things. So once the application has been developed, or in modules or entire the application, whatever it is, that will go to generally the testing phase. So where it test engineers will be performing different types of testings, and then accordingly they will be generating the bug report, and again they will send back that to development team will fix those bugs. So that's a repeated cycle, as you know. So during that time, test engineers would be requiring some database in order to load some test data. And there are different types of testing, like regression testing, stress testing, etc., etc. So we'll be creating different, databases for that. So let's say we call that as system integration testing. So there is some concept called that. So for that, we might be creating some SIT database, or for some other testing, we might create some other databases. So that will be happening. And after that, the next phase would be quality analysis. So how the product was designed, whether the quality requirements are met or not, will be decided by this quality analysis team, and they would be requiring a database to be created for that, or sometimes they might be using the SIT database itself. So both ways it will work, and during that time we might create a separate database, quality analysis database, if at all they require a separate database. And finally it will go to user acceptance testing phase. So wherein how the application is working in the view of the user. So ultimately whether it is working as per the user expectation or not will be conducted by this team. So for that we'll be creating a separate database called UAT database. And then we'll be creating a, so finally when the application went live, we'll be creating a production database. So this is the only database which will be having live customer data. So the rest of the databases, right from the development to the UAT phase, will be having some dummy data. And of course, if there are any emergency fixes that you need to do in production, so you need to test that well before. So for that, people will be creating something called production fix environment. So for that, we will be creating a separate database called pfix database. So like this, in a project you might be having different databases for the same application. So if you are having multiple applications, then you can understand multiple databases would be there. So this is when the application is going fine with 1.0 version. So let's say after few years, your client will ask for the enhancement, and application team, let's say, started developing application version 2.0. So basically, when they are developing application version 2.0, they don't require to start from scratch. So, whatever the 1.0 version is there, to that itself, they are going to do some enhancement. So during this time, again, they will be requiring this, dev database, then SIT database. So we'd be using the same databases. We are not going to create a new one. So as we have these different, environments. So what application team will do is instead, so when the very first time there is no data, so obviously they will generate some dummy data. But in few years in the production database we will be getting some live data, so the data of the customers. So when they are developing this version 2.0, they would be using this live data, whatever is there in the production database, for their testing and development purpose. So for that reason, application team would require the data of production database to be copied onto development database or SIT database or QA database, UAT database, or a production fix database. So they will, because the data is readily available, so it is not required again to generate some dummy data. So they would ask a DBA to go ahead and copy the data from production environment to any of these low, we call them as lower environments. So any of these lower environment databases. But there are many things that need to be considered here. Point number one, if your application or if your production database is having sensitive data, like the credit card numbers of the customer or the mobile numbers of the customer or their bank account details, etc., etc., we call that as customer sensitive data. So whenever you have this customer sensitive data, and if you want to copy this data from a production environment to the development environment, as I said, in development environment and testing environment, usually developers will be having all the privileges. So there is a chance that developers can be able to see that sensitive data. Suppose somebody is storing their credit card information, including the CVV number. So you know what happens. If somebody able to see that data, you know what happens after that. If the person is not with the right intention, then that information can be misused. So to avoid this, or first of all, to have the data in the development database or any other environment, you need to get a exception approval from the application owner. So either it could be from the client or application team will be having a manager. So from that manager, you need to get an approval. So most of the times when you go to real time, yes, there will be already approvals in place. So you don't require to again worry about that. But suppose if you are doing this for a new application or new project, then please do remember this. It's very important that you need to have an exception approval from the client or the application owner in order to copy the data. So generally to say, you should, as per the security policies, you should not copy the data from production environment to any other environment. But for testing or other purpose, many a times people will ask you to do that. So for that you require an approval. So that's point number one that you need to remember. And point number two, even though we have an approval, even application owners or the client knows that the information is very sensitive and it can be misused. So once we copy the data from production to any other environment like development or UAT, you will be doing something called data masking. That means you are going to hide those sensitive column information or sensitive tables information. For that, application team generally will provide some scripts, and after you copy the data from production to other environments, as a sysdba you need to execute these data masking scripts. So what these scripts will do, so to give an example, for example, there is a column in which the credit card information is stored like this. So when you copy the data from production to test environment, so the same credit card number will be displayed in the test environment as well. But when you run before handing over, so once you copy the data from production to testing environment, before you give the database access to the application team, you would be executing this masking script, and this masking script is going to simply mask your credit card number. So maybe it will allow only the last two digits to be displayed, or sometimes it may mask entire number with X symbol. So even the mobile number as well. So if you have some mobile number, even that mobile number will be masked, and only the last three characters or last two characters will be displayed like this. So this is what basically these data masking scripts will do. So that scripts, as I said, will be provided by application team. So once you copy the data from production to any other environment, you need to execute these masking scripts, and then only you need to give the data, or you need to hand over the database to the application team. So as I said again, if it is already existing environment, all these things will be in place. But if at all, you know, it is a new application or new project, again you need to go ahead and follow this process. So this is when I am talking about when the database is having sensitive data. So if you don't have a sensitive data, then step number 2 is not required, but still step number 1 is required, that is getting the exception approval. Because ultimately tomorrow we should not be the scapegoats. So tomorrow somebody should not ask, like without any approval, how or why you copied the data from production to other environments. So nobody should raise a question about that. So always please follow the process rather than going with the technical stuff. And in some environments where I have worked, I have seen development team itself will be executing these data masking scripts. So once we copy the data, we inform them, then they will be executing the data masking scripts. So, but to me as a DBA, that is not a good idea, because what if they don't execute the masking script, and they can able to see some sensitive data, so that would be a problem. So that's the reason, as a DBA, security lies with our responsibility more than application team. So that's the reason we need to take care of executing this masking script, even though it is a little burden for us. And of course, if you can able to automate that, like by writing some shell script or something, it is all a good way. So we can just execute that shell script, and the things will work. So again and again, whenever people want to do some testing and all, so many a times they would be requiring the data to be copied to different environments. So that is why I said this will be a frequent activity in real time. So is that clear for everyone or any questions? Okay, so instead of calling it as copying the data from production environment to other environment and all, so we call this as refresh of the database, or we call that as database refresh. So whenever somebody says database refresh, it means that they want to copy the data from any other environment to the other destination environment. Now, this database refresh can happen at different levels. So sometimes application team may ask you to refresh entire database, means all the schemas, all the tables and all. So in such cases, usually we go with a methodology called Arman refresh or Arman cloning, because it is the faster way to do that. So we will see this how to do, or even export import also will support this, but export import might take a little bit more time. So that's the reason people will opt to go for Arman cloning. And number two, they may ask you for some particular schemas, some 4 to 5 schemas they might ask you to do a refresh. So in that case, definitely we go with export import only. Or sometimes they may ask you for some particular tables, then also you can go for export import. Or sometimes they may ask you some particular rows inside some particular tables. So that is also possible through export import. So these are different levels that are possible with export import. Full database, some specific schemas, tables or rows. So that is about that. And a normal user can take export of its own schema, but if a normal user wants to take export of other schemas, then they need to have this privilege or a role, exp underscore full underscore database. So if you grant this role to any user, that user will be able to export entire database. So usually we will not do that in real time. So first, let's go and see an example on how to take these different levels of export. Then we will come back to the other points. So the syntax to take the export will be like this. The command is exp. Then you need to tell into which file you want to take export, and you need to provide the file name. So usually when you are writing down the file name, so it would be better that you mention the file name very clearly. And this is called as dump file. This file is generally called as dump file. So for example, here I have given the name of the file as full underscore proddb underscore 22nd September. So by looking at this file name, the fellow DBA can be able to understand that this is the full database export for the database by the name proddb, and this export has been executed on 22nd September. So they should be able to know what export it is and on which database you have executed this and on which date you have executed this. Date is not much mandatory. Why? Because when the file is created, when you say ls-ltr, it will give you the date, but it, it would be a good way to even include the date as well. Then to track this activity, just like in SQL loader, we will be using a log file, and usually we'll be maintaining the same name for the log file. Only thing, the extension will be giving it as .log. And because, as I said, I am going to take full database export, we are going to say full equals to y. So this is the option that we are using in order to tell to export that I am going with full database export. So let us go and execute this. Now where this file will be created, because I have not specified any location in the file name. So when you are executing this command, at what location you have executed this, by default the file will be created in that location itself, in the present working directory. Or if you want this to be created in a specific location, then yes, you can provide the location as well. Now one thing I want to show you here is, when you execute the export, you might be getting this kind of warning message. So this is, a kind of warning message that Oracle will put in. It doesn't do any harm to the export or when you are doing import also, but it will keep on repeatedly, displaying on the screen. So to avoid this, we are going to add one option to our export command. So simply we need to say statistics equals to none. So if you mention this, that warning message will not be displayed on your screen. And one more important point is, so if you can see here, already the export file has been created, even the log file also. So export is having one very dangerous behavior, that when you re-execute your export with the same file name and same log file name, generally if already file is existing, you will get a warning message that file is already existing and you cannot use the same name. But here in export, that is not the behavior. If already a file is there with the same name and you execute with you execute by mistakenly with the same name again, it will start overriding the first file without asking. It won't ask you your permission, nothing. Straight away it will go ahead and reuse that particular file. So that's the reason always we should be careful in providing the file names. So because we have used that option statistics equals to none, so now you will not see that warning message. So because I said full database, what export is doing, we'll be able to see here. So if you have a look at here, because I said full database, it will export everything in that particular database, like table space information, then profiles information, then user information, what are all the rules that are there, then about database links, etc., synonyms, etc., etc. Then it will take each and every table definition as well as the rows, whatever is there inside that particular table, and even views, synonyms, constraints, indexes, materializer views, everything will be exported because we said full database. So similarly, you can go for the other levels of export. So let's say I want to go ahead with only one schema. So somebody who look at can understand that this is a schema level export, and the name of the schema is TM which was taken on 22nd September. So because here we need to take export of only one schema, we are going to provide an option called owner equals to TM and of course, to avoid the warning, we can say statistics equals to none. So it will take the export of only TM user. So similarly, we have commands here in the hands-on document. So for other two levels, like the table level as well as the row level export. So what is happening exactly inside when we export, when we run this export command? So basically your export will is going to convert the things into the select statement. So when I say exporting a schema, for example here, so you can see it is exporting all the tables inside that. So what it will do basically internally is, for example, it will run select star from table T1. Then it will run select star from T10, select star from T11, T12. So like this, it is going to run the select statements against that. So you can see the flow here. It is going to convert the commands into select statements, and you know how a select statement will process. So after processing the select statement, whatever the data is coming, it will be put onto this dump file. So that is what basically export will do. And which process is going to do this activity is the server process which will be created for this export activity. So here when you run this exp command, it is asking for the username. So whatever the user that you have given here, so for that user one server process will be created because it is connecting to database, and then that server process will take care of this entire activity. So that is about the export process. So once we have completed the export process, how we are going to do the import? So let's say this is the production database server which is there on machine 1, and I have another database by the name development database in machine 2. So here I have taken the export, so I will be getting a dump file here. So how we are going to import it? So first we need to copy this dump file into the machine 2 because both are located in two different machines. So we need to copy this dump file, and for that we'll be using a secure copy command, SCP. So once this dump file has been copied onto this development database, then we'll be executing the import command in order to import the data. And when you are importing the data for the very first time, there are some things that we need to take care, or when we are importing into an already existing schema, then we need to take care of other things. So we will see both of them. So that is what here it is saying. After taking the export, we need to copy the dump file to the destination server. Then we need to execute the import command. So what import will do? So if export is a select statement processing, import is a combination of DDL and DML processing. As you can see here, import is first creating a table, then it is inserting the data, then it is creating indexes or any other objects like views, synonyms and all, and finally it is going to create the constraints. So just like when creating a table, what and all you will do, so it will follow the same process. Because import is executing DML and DDL statements, redo entries will be generated during import because it is a change to the database. So as I said, when you are performing import for the very first time, what are all the things you need to follow? So there are two things. Either we can allow the import process to create the same user and then perform the load. So suppose if you want to the export, you have taken the user as TM prod. So you want to create the same user in the destination database, then you can leave that chance to import process itself. So import will create a user for you. But the usual recommended way is we need to create manually the user and we need to have the same privileges as in the source database. So something like here we need to create a user and we need to make sure that user is having the same privileges as the user in the production database. But it is not mandatory that you need to have the same username. For example, here I have the username as tmprod. I can import the data into a different user in development database by the name TMDB. But privileges wise and all, it will be better if it is same. And point number two, you need to have you need to better to have the same table space with the name and the size in the source database. So even you can have a different table space name, but sometimes it would be creating issue. Especially we have something called partition tables or some other table types. So during the time it might create an issue. So that's the reason. Always better to maintain the same table space name, including the same size. Definitely size should match. Why? Because you are loading the same data. So this is for the very first time when you are doing that. So how you can get the privileges information from the production environment? We have different views for that. So in user management, we have queries for that. So you can go back and you can refer to those queries, take whatever privileges that user is having, and then we can go ahead and do that. So what I am doing now is the same thing. So I have machine 1 in which prod database is there and I have taken schema level export here. Now I will import this schema into a different database which is executing on machine 2. So this is machine 2. So just to represent I am using white color screen in putty and just a moment. I have started the wrong database here. So here I have a database by the name devdb. So we are going to import that schema data into this dev database. So here I have already a schema by the name TMDEV. So I can import into that particular user. So there is a schema already by the name TMDEV. So I'm going to import into that particular schema. So first, as I said, we need to copy this dump file into the other server. So for that we are using scp command. So we need to say scp, then the dump file name and log file name, and then you need to connect to Oracle user at the rate of machine2 IP address, and in which location you want to copy this file. So let's say I want to copy this file into /home/Oracle. So it will ask you for the Oracle password of this 105 server, that is machine2 server. So I'm going to provide you the password. Then it is going to copy the dump file. So depends on your network speed. This is one step which is going to take some time, because in real time usually the file sizes will be in GBs, and if your network is not that much fast, then it might take a quite long time to complete. So done, both the files have been copied. So let us move on to machine 2, and I am already there in the same location /home/Oracle. So see whether the file has been copied or not. So the main important check that we generally do is we will be checking the size of the dump file. So just to make sure that file has been copied properly or not. So if the size is matching, most of the times like it is like the data is or the file is copied properly. So here the size is matching. Now we need to import into this dev user. So for that we are going to execute this command imp, then file equals to, we need to provide the export dump file name, then log, we need to provide a different log name because this is export log file name, so we cannot use that again. So I am creating a new log file like this. So this represents that we are going to import into TMDEV user on 22nd September. And now, because the schema names are different between the production environment and the development environment, we need to use these clauses from user, that is tmprod, then to user tmdev. So if the schema names are same between production and the other environments, then you don't require to give this line from user and to user is not required. Only if the schema names are different, then you need to go with that. Then I am going ahead and importing it. Okay, so here only thing that it is saying is table T1 has failed because already same table name is existing in the TMDB user. So apart from that, everything is successful. If there is no table with the same name, even T1 could have been successful. That's okay. And there is a warning as well, which is saying that this import generated a separate SQL file which contains the DDL that failed due to a privilege issue. So let us open this file and see what it says. So there is nothing here. You can see the file is of 0 size, means no information is there. So that's okay. So that is how we are going to import into a different schema and into a different database. So this is for the very first time. As I said, this will be a repeated activity. So let's say after 2 days again your application team asked to refresh the data from the production environment. Then what we need to do? Because the very first time tables will not be there. So these tables are not there. So import has been done. Now next time when you are doing, what happens? Tables are already there. So when the tables are already there and you are importing, you would be getting the same message that object already existing. That means we need to first drop these tables. Not only tables, any other objects that we have, views, synonyms, sequences, everything. So you can have a look here. So one is there when you are importing for the second time, two options for you. One is either we need to drop all the objects using dynamic SQL, and it is preferred when there are less number of objects present in the schema. Like you have only 100 tables, 50 views and all, you can go ahead with that. Or we need to drop and create entire schema with the same password and privileges, when especially it is preferred to use when you are doing a bulk import. Bulk import in the sense, let's say 5,000 tables, those kind of things are there. Then it is always preferred to go with the second method. So let me show you both how we will be doing it. So what is a dynamic SQL? It is something like generating the commands with the help of the select statement. So something like this here. So what we are going to do is, first I am going to show you this one, that how to drop all the objects and then how to do the import. So we are going to do this. So we need to connect to the development database and we need to execute this command. So it is going to generate commands for you. So instead of you writing drop table, table name 1, table name 2, or drop materialized views, etc., so you can generate all these commands in a single shot with that dynamic SQL. And then you can copy and paste. So now you can see I'm copying it. So let me execute this once again to see if any objects are pending. So only drop database link is there, but I think that is a public database link, or no. Okay, sorry. As I said yesterday, to drop a database link, you should not use this schema alias. Directly you should use the database link name. I'm there in sysuser, so let me connect as TMDev, then it will work. Done. So so till all the objects are dropped, you need to keep on repeatedly executing this statement. So now you can see all the objects are dropped and I got no rows selected. Then I can start the import. So same command what I used earlier. So from user and to user, and then the tables will be imported. So this is how we are going to do the import. So as I said, if the number of tables or number of objects in the schema are huge, then we need to go ahead and drop the schema and we need to recreate it with the same password and privileges. So how we'll be getting the same password? Because we don't be having the password information. So how we would be getting those details? You can generate the create user statement with the help of this package. So this is a package in order to generate the DDL either for table or any object, even including a user as well. And as I said, privileges, you need to get it from the user management section. We have queries there. So what I am doing now is I will show you this method, like to drop the user and then doing the import. So first we need to take the user information. So here we'll be getting the password, but that password will be in hexadecimal format. So you will not be knowing the original password. So this is the syntax to create the user. So what you need to do is copy and paste this in a notepad. Save this in a notepad. So next you need to take the privileges information. So I'm using the same queries, whatever is there in your hands-on document. So we have three views. So first is DBS's privs, will tell you what system level privileges it is having. Second one is table level privileges, and the third one is what are all the roles that are granted to this user. And take this information also and keep it in a notepad. Then once you have this information of privileges as well as the command to create the user, you can drop the user TMDev. Of course, because TMDev is already having objects, we need to use cascade command. So when you do this, automatically all the tables or other objects, whatever is there in the TMDev user, will be dropped automatically. Next, you are going to create the user again with the commands whatever we have. Okay, so if you are getting this, I mean, this should be in a single line. So that's the reason we got this. So now user has been created. Now you can grant these permissions. Grant create material as review. Then create database link. So you can grant all of them in a single shot. Resource connect to TMDev. So now you have the same user with the same password and same privileges. So once it is done, then again you will be running the same import command. Okay, sorry, one thing is missing, that we have recreated the user but we have not granted the quota on the table space. So that is what it is saying. Here it is saying no privileges on the table space. So it's done. Now let us retry. What happened? Okay, got that. Because even though here it is saying no privileges on the table space, it will create the table but it will not insert the data. So that's the reason second time it is saying object is already existing. So again we can go with a way to drop the things. So now it is importing. So that is how we are going to do that. So let me add that line as well. Okay, so that is how we are going to do the import and the commands what we have used. So I have just placed it here. So there are some options here which we will see tomorrow. So I will explain about them, and then this is an old version of export import what we have seen, and from 10G onwards Oracle enhanced this export import and it introduced something called data pump. So which is an easiest way and fastest way to do the data refresh. So we'll be seeing that how that data pump will work and all. And we can say like almost in no project we are using export import now, because data pump is far better way to do that. But if due to some reason data pump is not working, then in such case you need to have an exposure to go ahead and use export import. So please practice both of them. both export and import as well. So anyone having questions?
No.
Okay, so let's meet. I believe today is Friday. Yeah. So let's meet again on Monday. And meanwhile, please complete your practice of this export import. So thanks everyone for joining and have a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too.